Hey everyone, welcome to SIG Apps. Today is Monday, July 10th, and we're going to be doing retro and planning in this meeting. Jace, thank you as always for leading our retro sessions. If you look in the chat, you'll see a link to the retrospective document. Please click on that and start filling it out. If you're not on mute and if you're not on mute and not talking, put yourself on mute. I think that's the right way to say that. Put yourself on mute if you're not talking. Thank you. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jace. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. So my request, as Michelle just said, is just if you're not speaking, please mute your microphone because it makes it really hard to keep a clear thought train when there's noise going on. Speaking of which, D00754702. Can you mute, please? So yeah, I want to thank you all for having me here to help facilitate, I believe, a really important ceremony in terms of our commitment to continuous improvement, which is our look back at the release cycle and the things that we felt good about and the things that maybe we wished we could have changed and we can change moving forward. So in that vein, a key part of the retro is to keep things really focused on being positive and focusing not necessarily on people or who might have done something that you didn't agree with, but more focus on the circumstances that led to that and how, just in a generic sense, that we can improve or change that moving forward. Again, the key is to not be blaming people for this or that, but to really focus on what are the things that we can actionably do to make life better as we move forward. And so with that in mind, I'm going to go through the first section of the retro, which is what went well in 1.7. And this is my personal favorite part because we can recognize people in the group that have done outstanding work through the release. So it looks like Helm released 2.3.0, 2.4.0, and 2.5.0 with lots of it focused on extensibility with plugin management, enabling chart developers, support for Kubernetes 1.6 and bug fixes. That is a huge, huge thing to have such a great release cadence alongside the regular Kubernetes release. And I believe that this is going to be something that's going to serve as an important example as more and more sections of the Kubernetes code get broken out into their own sections. So keep up the great work and being a great role model for other projects. Draft was announced, super exciting, and certainly helping with enterprise adoption as developers find a quick way to deploy their applications that may not have necessarily been container ready. Moved Monocular to github.com/Kubernetes-Helm. Anybody else want to step in and offer some thank yous, appreciation, or things that they felt good about this release cycle? And I'm going to mute while you do that.
I definitely noticed that whenever there was an announcement about like a flaky test or something going on in the Kubernetes core world, I would just kind of ask to see like, what's going on with that, and someone always had it under control and or maybe it had already been fixed. And a lot of times it was Janet. So thanks, Janet, and the rest of the team.
Cool. Anybody else want to thank anybody else? Certainly, I want to thank the SIG organizers because this is a really big SIG and a lot of things happening here. I attend more SIGs than most people, and I can tell you that this is one of the most exciting SIGs as far as things that are happening. So I think you guys do a fantastic job with a very difficult job. So that's my personal shout out to you guys. Okay, well, moving along, I think this is really the meat of the retro is looking into things that perhaps could have gone better. So what I'd like to do is right now there are no bullet points in there. I'm going to open the floor and I will try and write the concerns down as we go through them, but feel free also to add your own as a bullet point if you have something that you'd like to speak up about. So with that, I'm going to open the floor. What could have gone better? Clearly, we had a perfect 1.7 release cycle. That is so exciting. Okay, we're done.
It did feel a little bit better than the 1.6 cycle, a little smoother. It seems like we had kind of a grasp on who was working on what. From my perspective, there was a lot more communication than before. And I mean, as far as Helm and draft go, we didn't have any major issues. I just think that we have a lot of contributors, and so we're just definitely trying to keep on top of pull requests and helping new contributors. And I think that's a theme with the charts team as well. It's the scalability issues and figuring out how to deal with that. And there's some comments in the chat. Matt Fisher saying, I honestly cannot think of anything that went wrong with 1.7 from my perspective. TPRs to CRD migration was interesting, but that's not a reflection of the release itself. I'd really like to hear from the Kubernetes core team. Ken, you're muted. I think you were saying something. I'm not sure. Or Janet, do you have anything to add? Dan, from your perspective. Eric, too, you always have a fun perspective. So if any of y'all have anything to add, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Hey, Ken, we still can't hear you, by the way. I guess while Ken works on that, I'll give one quick comment, which was like, I thought the actual release stuff was pretty cool. The stuff that like stateful sets and daemon sets brought up. It wasn't as clear to me what would be ready until probably that last like 2 weeks or so. So it would have been better maybe if we had a little bit more earlier communication on some of that stuff. And that's probably my fault. I need to reach out a little bit more to try to get more clarity on that. Because I think some of the earlier meetings were getting some statuses, but like I wasn't exactly sure what exactly we were getting. And then on the TPR to CRD migration, I think that was, I guess it was interesting. I think it was mostly, like we were mostly in a supportive role on that. I think a lot of that work was handled by the SIG API machinery group or one of the other SIGs, I think. But so I knew it was there, but I don't know how much active work we were doing there. But at least I wasn't as aware of like the work beyond some of the supportive stuff we were doing on that.
Was there was some voice in the community that was like, wow, I didn't know that was going to happen. Did SIG Apps feel like you were prepared for that? Oh yeah, we can hear you now. Did the CRD thing throw anybody in SIG Apps? Was that pretty well understood, or was that kind of news to some people? I'll assume that it was okay. Yeah, I think that happened to a lot of people. Hey Ken, you were saying some stuff. What was going on over there?
Wait, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So one thing is, it's not clear to me that Helm releases are actually aligning with Kubernetes releases, right? So the 2.5 version of Helm works well against the 2.6 master version of Kubernetes, but it's not actually consuming any of the 1.7 features. And there are a couple of things that still seem to be broken against 1.7. For instance, I can't delete stateful sets because of the round tripping, things like that. So are we generally in the future going to plan to align Helm, which is a reasonable course of action, in my opinion at least, to align with the previous release of Kubernetes, or are we going to try to align it to be able to consume the features that come out with the current like 1.7 and going forward 1.8 release?
Yeah, so for every Kubernetes release, Adam's usually the person who goes in and kind of tests the new version out with Helm and then adds support for the new version. So generally there's a Kubernetes release, and then very shortly after there's a Helm release with Kubernetes 1.6 support or Kubernetes 1.7 support. And then there's, we want to maintain backwards compatibility as well. So Adam generally works on that, and he has a pull request out for Kubernetes 1.7 support right now.
Right, and to clarify that Kubernetes 1.7 support, that's just the client library support. That's not necessarily the stuff like what you were talking about, Ken, about the round tripping stuff for stateful sets. And I think there was also a couple of new resources that were added to Kubernetes that Helm does not understand yet for its install order. And those are also being added by the community as well. So that has, like, the changes that occur in a new release have not or do not be or have not been tested so much. It's just more like we bump the client version at this point. I don't know any action items other than what we've been doing currently for that. I know we had that problem in previous Kubernetes releases where, like, Helm will be targeting the previous versions release, and people like, well, we came out with Kubernetes 1.5, and Helm, the latest version of Helm, didn't have 1.5 support for at least, I think, a week or two. So we've been trying to get on the ball for at least getting the client library support, so at least Helm would work on the new release, and then trying to see where resources break from there.
I mean, a week or two lag isn't really, I mean, that's pretty good in my opinion, actually.
Do you, as a community, do we feel like it's important to look at maybe more of the feature alignment? So if, you know, the Kubernetes AI controller becomes a real thing in 1.9, you know, we make sure Helm can talk to it, or what kind of alignment do we want to do from a feature rollout perspective? Should we focus on current level features and not worry about head and just focus on the client, or should there be some forward-looking work in terms of leveraging new alpha and beta APIs?
I think that was my general question, and maybe it's not the right time to solve it right now, but maybe it's something we should put on the agenda to discuss in the future as we go forward, especially into 1.8 planning.
Yeah, definitely. Let's put this on the requested discussion topics, so we can allocate a lot of time in one particular meeting for answering that, and we can get the right people involved.
I'm going to put you on this as an action item owner, Michelle.
Happy to.
Great. So discuss alignment with features and upstream. Is that clear enough?
Yep.
Great. Okay. What else could have gone better in 1.7?
You know, I'm really interested also, Jimmy, if you're around, or Antoine, how's App Registry? How's all of that progress in 1.7, and could something have gone better there?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about that. I think for App Registry, what we really need to do is have more written roadmap and more just like publicly understandable roadmap. We've done a lot of stuff in stand-up and spoken out loud at these meetings, but they get written down in the SIG Apps notes, which isn't super intuitive when you're actually keeping track of the project on GitHub. But beyond that, I think we've done a really good job in terms of interacting with people who are interested in actually deploying this on-prem. And I would like to probably get more of that feedback into the community and not just behind closed doors. So I think just making things more public is probably where we could improve the most in App Registry.
Great.
Thanks for that.
What could, you know, a demo at the community meeting would be really great. That would be a fantastic thing. Is that possible?
Yeah, we could probably demo at the community meeting. We've only ever demoed SIG Apps, but the community meeting makes a lot of sense. Thanks for that idea.
Love to see that. So, Jameen, do you mind if I put you in as an action item to do, or to at least talk about that?
Sure.
Cool. Okay, what else? Anybody else got some stuff here?
I feel like there could be more. I feel like standups are becoming more consistent, but there's, at least in SIG Apps, but there are some projects that kind of haven't shown up regularly. So I'm just kind of wondering, do we need to revisit each project and kind of assess whether, they need SIG Apps support or not anymore? Because that list is really long. So if, there isn't any help that's needed, like, for example, like Open Compose and Compose are two examples, not to call them out. It's not a problem. There's no issue with not doing stand up. It's just, do we still need to continue supporting some projects and not? That's kind of a question, based off the absences.
Well, the tricky thing about SIG apps, just generally speaking, is that you have all these. It's like an umbrella, right? You've basically like a SIG with dozens of working groups underneath of it. That is a model that's going to become more frequent, especially when you look at things like SIG Cloud with all the working groups for doing all the cloud providers under it. I would love to see this group specifically, because you're so far ahead of the curve on that, decide what is a good model for a scrum of scrums, or is it, how does that work? So I'm also interested in that.
Yeah, this might be an action item to kind of dig deeper there and have, it'd be nice to have like a SIG Apps meta meeting 1 week and just focus on how we're working and check in with everyone. I kind of do this asynchronously, but I think it's nice to also have that, and very healthy to have that in a public meeting.
Great. Okay, you're another one action item. Anything else? We're getting into our time box for this section, so.
I just wanted to say one more thank you. Adnan's not here, but we added Adnan as a co-lead, which helps me and Matt Farina out a lot. So just wanted to say that went well.
I want to just throw in a thanks. She's probably not on the call and doesn't hang out in SIG Apps, but Don Chen had a really tough job and did a great job. And I think one of the reasons 1.7 was smooth was Don was on top of it, had to make some hard decisions about what went in and didn't go in the release, and fixed a lot of tests. So if you see Don Chen around, just thank her for a good 1.7.
Yeah. I plus 100 to that. She's really raised the bar. I for future release leads. Cool. All right. Well, so let's go to the last section of the retro, which is what are we concretely going to do differently for 1.8 and beyond? It looks like, Michelle, you've got something here. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, I think what I've noticed is the charts team continually having some of the same issues. And unfortunately, I don't think that anybody from the charts team is here today, just because of vacation and other things. So something I've seen is they have a lot of pull requests, and they've been adding new maintainers. There's definitely some scalability issues like they're running into. They have all these efforts to increase and make their process more efficient. People are asking to be reviewers, so there's like an onboarding kind of transition that they're figuring out and getting more comfortable with right now. There's also a lot of questions not related to actual charts repo admin things, but how do you develop charts, make that more efficient? How do you discover charts? Like, say you're hosting your own charts repository. How do you make your charts more discoverable? So there's a lot of questions right now that I've been hearing about charts, and I feel like we could give the charts group a lot more love and attention and focus for the 1.8 cycle.
Is there also like a meta conversation about like what at least the Kubernetes community wants the charts to be experienced to be around, like the trade-off between like careful curation and high quality bar but not scalable versus like very open and very scalable but like different, less curated? We talked about that when we started the charts effort, but maybe it's time to just kind of restate what we originally intended and talk about where we're at and where we want to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we had something in mind when we started, but this SIG is focused on creating that feedback loop between the project developers and admins and the actual users and the end users. And so I think that's what we need to focus on and go back and revisit those questions that you mentioned, Eric.
Yeah, and this is Matt, and it may be worth even going out and polling the community here too. I mean, that's something we've done in the past is surveys, because there may be different levels, some different expectation we're not aware of. Doing it here is great, but this may be a good time to do some form of survey.
Yeah, that's such a good idea. I didn't even think about that.
And it would actually be good if maybe someone could just summarize like what the Helm tool does to like, does it prefer a certain repo? Like how fluid is it in terms of what you pick? How many are there competing repos to charts? Like I don't know that, but like where are we on the like charts is the one true place versus anyone can turn up a repo and how easy is it? Like I think I have ideas about that, but I'd love to hear from someone who's more day-to-day active on that question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, agreed.
Who could be a good person? Could someone give us a 2-minute spiel on that in the future?
I think someone from the charts maintainers team is probably the best. Probably Adnan, because he built the linter and is a chart maintainer.
And he could also speak to like Helm's repository model.
Yes.
Okay.
One thing that is currently in flight right now is revisiting how we keep the charts repos, particularly incubator, in GitHub, and ways to go forward so we can version different versions of charts to work against different versions of Kubernetes and make it easier to deprecate charts that are in flight. I know Anirudh's been working on that, and I think Vic's been involved in that. I've been involved a little bit. I think all the chart maintainers are aware of it. So, I mean, maybe based on the outcome of that, we could also have some better ideas about how to make sure we have high quality charts that work with a particular version of Kubernetes and which repos you should attach to based on which version of Kubernetes you're running.
Yeah, I think that relates to the curation question, which is like you could put works with label on, Kubernetes version labels on a bunch of charts. Is the label accurate, or did someone just like copy it to the next version without thinking about it? So like, there's a question of how should we like to tell people what works with what version, but like how accurate is that information? And like it's actually a lot of work to make sure everything works with every version, with every possible set of, like no one can test with every possible set of values. How are we gonna, so that goes to curation. And
yeah, I know these are conversations that the chart maintainers are having and have had and have been thinking about. And again, I think this is where we can help support them, because we've just been sitting here for a few minutes and we've teased out like several really important topics that we need to have bigger conversations about, like, and just to, go further in detail on that particular note. Like, Adnan's been working on the common chart so that when a new version comes out and the format of manifest changes a little bit, or you move, something from the annotation to a feature, like you can make that switch more easily happen in pull requests in a more automated way. I know Vic has some plans for CI and supporting, at least the last 2 versions of Kubernetes when they test a chart. So I think there are like several different conversations happening, but I think there definitely needs to be a more high-level, detailed, thorough conversation about like the big picture when it comes to charts.
I'd like there to be at least 2 conversations. One where like everyone kind of lays out their concerns and thoughts, and then we all go have an adequate time to think about it, and then with no expectation of decision in the first meeting, and then maybe follow up with decision-oriented meetings.
Yeah, that feels really good. We should do that. And if Adnan's listening to this, sorry I volunteered you, but I volunteered you.
Great. This is all very good stuff. Anything else in our last 3 minutes that we want to cover in terms of things we'd like to do differently for 1.8 and beyond?
This is Jago, also from Google. One thing that came up in the community meeting was the need to start on release notes earlier in the cycle and improve on that process. So just want to get it on the general roadmap and SIG apps as well. Thinking through that, one of the proposals was that every pull request should have an issue associated with it to more easily auto-generate the release notes, but I think there's also a higher level sort of aggregation of the features. So just getting people thinking about that, I think, will help.
Dan, Antoine, Gio, does the PM rep group own that piece, the release notes piece for SIG apps? I'm just curious.
Yeah, usually we do, and I think what we want to do this time is write the 1.8 release notes earlier, and I think the main point was get that done earlier so that we have a rough idea what's coming, and we'll change it and iterate upon it over the release time. But rather than work on it the last week or the last few days, we'll just do it earlier than that. And yeah, I usually supply the input for that for SIG apps. I mean, actually, this is maybe an aside, but I'm actually writing the general one for all of Kubernetes for 1.8. So I'm writing that draft in the next few weeks.
So I think what happened was, at the end of 1.7, basically we have this document of unorganized release notes, and a lot of the PRs associated with them weren't particularly clear. So a couple of us had to go through for all the features and bugs and so forth in SIG apps prior to the PMs aggregating those notes, go through, categorize each one as belonging to SIG apps, SIG nodes, so forth and so on, and then clean the release note up so it would actually be meaningful to a user. I think we could probably start doing that sooner, or just making sure that when people attach a note, like when reviewers, like when you look at a PR, look at the release note and ask yourself, is this meaningful to a user? Was this release note written correctly, to make it easier for them? And then the other problem we ran into is we were doing all of this last minute primarily because people are still trying to cherry pick features in up until the last minute, right? So it's unclear exactly what's going to be in those release notes. And I mean, honestly, like, I was one of the people who was doing it. I know Clayton was involved for a couple of different SIGs. Janet was involved. It was like a lot to do last minute, but it wasn't super overwhelming in my opinion. So for whatever it's worth.
Well, let me give you a brief update on what we have pre-agreed regarding the release notes at the retro meeting, and what we're going to finally agree to in the next few SIG-PM meetings and generally in the community. So we would like to have all the release notes prepared and all the features defined at approximately the period when code freeze will happen. So we will have feature freeze at the beginning of August, the period of time when all the features have to be defined and submitted to the features repo as an issue to the features repo. At the same time, we would like you as the feature owners to continue working on these features together with the documentation and together with the release notes until the beginning of September, when the actual code freeze will happen. With the real release date at the end of September, we're expecting to have enough time to polish these release notes, to polish documentation in a few weeks before the actual release. I suppose that sounds valuable for us.
So that makes sense, but it wasn't. I mean, the ones that were feature issues, usually had well-defined issues. Like you could read it and make some sense out of it. A lot of the other release notes were related to break fix. And a lot of times those issues, it wasn't clear what the issue was, and it wasn't necessarily clear what the break fix did. So you'd have to go back and look at the PR and say, okay, well, here's what this guy did. Here's what the actual note should be. That was more of the churn I felt.
Right. So with 1.7, we have better situation with the release notes attached to the features than with the release notes attached to bug fix or some minor enhancements. So we have to set it like the same barrier for all types of release notes, and it is likely to have them ready for review until the beginning of September.
Great, Ihor, thank you so much for filling us in on that. We are at time, and Michelle, do you want to resume the regular SIG Apps meeting? Is that?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, again, thank you everybody for allowing for this opportunity for continuous improvement, and I'm excited to do this again at the next one at 1.8. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jace.
Yeah, glad to help.
So. With that, let's go straight into planning. Does everyone have access to the planning document? I'll paste a link. 1 second if you don't. All right, there is now a link to the planning document. Dan, do you want to go through the document with us?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. So if you have the document up, this is a document for 1.8. It looks like people have been adding a lot of their work in here, so that's great. Essentially, we have the first part is we have stateful sets, daemon sets, deployments, and replica sets. Those four, I mean, the longer term plan is to bring those, to hopefully get those four into GA by the end of the year. So I don't think we'll do it in Q3. I think Q3 will be a step to sort of get us there, hopefully in Q4. And we wanted to, from some conversations with some of the people in the SIG, it looks like, I mean, we want to try to do that, keep these together so that for consistency, just so that they all have the features that we want. And then I think the next section is really on cron jobs and getting that to beta. And I had some conversations with Message on that. I guess we can start with stateful sets. So yeah, the update on stateful sets, like, Ken, do you have anything for that? I mean, did you write most of the stuff up here?
So yeah, for most of the stuff for stateful set, daemon set, and deployment, we're trying to look at what we need to do to take them to GA by the end of the year, and try to get as much of the stability and readiness and consistency features in as we can in 1.8. The main thing for all of them, and we're still open to, like, really open to suggestion about this part, we have to move everything into apps. And I think the desire is for all the core controllers to move from apps to V1 as a group. So we were wondering if potentially we should move to, instead of just moving deployment or daemon set into V1 beta 1, should we move everything, all the core controllers, into another beta and then move that as a group into GA? All the surrounding work is basically related to identify deficiencies with either API consistency, testing, and daemon set in particular, scheduling functionality, also determining whether we want daemon set to go through the default scheduler or whether we want it to continue to be a scheduler, and making sure that if we're unable to actually implement the long-term solution for that the API is consistent enough that you could easily change out the back-end implementation and not disrupt the API.
Okay, thanks. Any questions on stateful sets, or otherwise we can move on to daemon set? I think a lot of what Ken said applies to all four of these, but yeah, is there anything specific on daemon set? Like, I think Janet is around. Or Eric or anyone else who has anything on daemon sets?
Well, again, I think
Yeah.
the main thing for daemon set was at a minimum by the end of 1.8, the known deficiencies with scheduling we need to address in one way or another and make a decision about whether we want to, again, go with the default scheduler as the implementation. So a daemon set just create pods, which seems to be the direction the community is leaning, or whether we want to continue having daemon set effectively do its own scheduling. So other than, just making sure it's consistent, fixing the known defects, we want to at least have a decision made on that so we know what direction we're taking it in the long term.
Okay, so it sounds like that's a decision point we need to discuss.
Yeah.
And hopefully get resolved in as part of 1.8.
There's a lot of discussion about it in GitHub, so it would just be something that we need to kind of land on as a community, I think.
Yeah, one thing I was going to say for stateful sets as well, it's called out in deployments, but I don't know that we should graduate any of these to GA until we're pretty sure that higher level orchestrators can use these effectively. So we think we have most of the solutions in place with the partition stuff, with pausing. But I do think that it's important before we go to GA to say, could someone like App Controller, can someone like Helm, can higher level orchestrators for things like canaries, can we effectively do that in a number of spots? It's somewhat underdefined right now. There's no one story that ties all those together, or no one tracking issue. But it's fairly important in terms of, is this ready for GA means people can reliably build things on top of it that help them roll out complex stuff.
Clayton, that seems kind of like hard. I don't know how we would force that to closure. So could we flip that around and say that, like, if anyone building an app controller brings us feedback in X time window, then we will want to act on it, and we'll send out a call for feedback, but Timebox.
Yeah, so let me rephrase it. The use case of I need to upgrade a complex stateful set, and that is successful, and that we have closed the loop between the consumers and the producers, like in the sense of there's people out there doing complex stateful apps. I'd like to make sure we at least do a little bit of due diligence before we just move them to GA, right? Because I've seen examples of people doing terrible things with stateful sets because they didn't have any way of doing it, and I'm not sure that it's a gap in the stateful set. So, I don't know that I think it's right to turn it around. I'm just not sure that we can absolve ourselves of responsibility for making sure that complex upgrades with stateful sets are even possible. And what does it look like when someone does that? And we could maybe pick something like, people using stateful sets with Elasticsearch. We could pick something, folks who've done more advanced stuff. I would like to get a call out for people to review, but I don't know that I'm a little worried because I've seen people using stateful sets. I've seen people doing terrible things with stateful sets, and I'm not sure that we're in alignment with the stateful set's great for standing something up. Is it great for something that needs to be maintained over time?
So do you agree that we should bring them all to GA at the same time?
Yeah, no, well, I think we can. I think deployments don't have this problem because people are obviously succeeding with deployments, right? We have a large amount of feedback. We know what the use case is. I haven't seen that yet with daemon sets or stateful sets. That's my worry.
Yeah. At the same time, there's something to be said for the clarity of the message. If they all go GA, and it ensures it's a process that can come to conclusion, and that we are giving attention simultaneously to consistency across them, which I think also has some value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not trying to be obstructionist in the sense of that. I want to say there is a work item that is, does the update model of stateful sets and daemon sets satisfy the requirement that people using stateful sets and daemon sets have to deploy real applications?
I think the only way we can resolve this, now that we put it out in the wild, is to continue to get feedback as people actually use it and incorporate that feedback as we go forward. And I think that's the underlying intention that we have over this next release and over the following release to make sure that we incorporate feedback from users. And for stateful set in particular, because I think people understand, like, I want a global sidecar or administrative task across all of my nodes very well. People who are deploying, I guess you call it cloud native applications, really get the concept. I think stateful applications and containers in orchestrated containers is relatively new. So maybe the onus might be on us to develop examples for the stateful applications that we think are very prevalent and ensure it works well with those. And also remember that we can't hit all of them, but we should be able to hit major categories of them, right?
Or even audit and summarize the state of stateful set, the state of the art in stateful set apps. And we may not have to write the examples, but we should be able to audit, review, and encourage feedback, but also go solicit feedback for a few representative examples that we believe are complex enough that there may be some doubt as to whether we've completely solved or whether we have correctly enabled the solution to the problem. I'll put it as a tracking item in this list as a high level, because I know that there's people working on various subparts of the problem, but I don't want to lose sight of the, did we succeed at stateful set update is really important to me.
This is Jago. I want to reiterate something Eric said about time boxing it. I think there is a cost to not bringing these core controllers to GA in terms of confidence in the system as a whole. So I think the consistency is critically important. I think we shouldn't expect that it won't continue to evolve. So I think having some time box, some timeline for this process would be important also.
Yeah, I don't think that's stopped anybody from deploying on Kubernetes today, but I agree that moving into a GA state for the core fundamental things that people need to run apps is a positive sign.
So one other thing to consider, I mean, when we move to GA, it doesn't mean we can't modify the semantics under the hood, small tweaks as necessary, right? But we really just have to be sure that the API that we've built is stable enough that it's not going to be modified as we do point release and as we go forward.
Yeah, and
anybody who add stuff, right?
Yeah, and I think like deployments is a great example of this. Is we've identified things in deployments that we were pretty sure about, and then we changed them over the last year.
Right. Now, the other thing, particularly for deployment, is I think there's still some discussion that needs to be had, and we need to kind of start making decisions about things like, defaulting selectors and selector mutability is a big one, right? I think people are starting to lean towards, we're not going to do it. I think there may be some use cases for it, but I think we kind of have to make a decision on what's going to happen with that before we move forward into GA. For daemon set, template generation probably has to go away. And again, the scheduling thing. So there's still things that we need to close on in the near term if we want to go GA in the midterm by like end of year.
I want to call out something that Sarah and Ihor have said before, which is that 1.8 should be focused on stabilization. I see some things on the lists, particularly for deployment, that while there have been issues for a long time, they are effectively going to be new features. I think we should look closely at whether we want to add new features, especially if we're trying to drive to GA, or whether we should only fix things that are like bad defaults or inconsistencies rather than new operational behaviors. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like, I think that's almost the corollary to what I was asking, which is, can we, if we go through the list of the remaining features, are they things that can be safely added afterwards? Do we have the experience, et cetera? And I think that ties into that question that you just asked. For things like automatic rollback, is automatic rollback fundamental to deployments? And can we add that gracefully? We need to know whether we can add it gracefully post GA or not, probably.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at some point you just have to say, like, if you just keep adding something, I would love for us to go to GA after all the things that are in there, as much as possible, have had enough time to get feedback on them. So if you're always adding a new thing, then you always have something that you haven't had time to have feedback on. So it might be an opportunity to take advantage of this 1.8 stabilization, not add anything, fix all the things we know that are warts on it, and then 1.9, we're going to call it GA and not have any planned work. And then 1.10, we can certainly add more stuff after that, including complex features, as long as we just have to go through the right process.
Yeah, I agree. I would say I am a little worried about the design of deployments, and rollback is a pretty fundamental thing. Like, if the expectation can't be accomplished without a significant API change, then that would be the only obstacle. And if it can be, then I think it's very reasonable to pull the GA data and push features out. Same for auto-pausing. Auto-pausing is a little bit more the one I'm concerned with.
Yeah.
Is the design of, that's kind of what I was alluding to. If you want to script a stateful set update because the core stateful set update isn't sufficient to update something that's moderately complex or has a number of components or prereqs like draining traffic, then does auto-pausing have to be part of the fundamental thing, because it is likely to change how we think about the controller. If we only discuss in 1.8 or prototype to prove or not, and we don't commit to it as a feature, I think that's very reasonable, simply to answer the question about whether we're ready to lock it in forever.
We could do that. I guess I feel like any discussion that's not, like, there's a lot of stuff, even if we cut out the things that are new features, there's still a lot of work to do to bring it to GA. And I really was hoping maybe we would get everything we know of done in 1.8. So then 1.9, all we do is like add a V1, apps V1, and add a few lines and we're done. So I feel like anything that's nice to have is in fact going to sap energy from doing the must-haves.
Yeah, I guess, like, and again, like, I know these things are on here because people who I work with have put them on here. Some of these are what we consider real blockers in production. And so I think I'm not actually advocating that they are required. I am concerned that we declare something GA that some people are successful with, but not everyone is successful with. I want to make sure we at least cross the I's and T's before we go to GA. That's really more the.
You did talk about how there's, you want all the controllers to work with higher level orchestration, which I agree that we want that to work. So, but I think that also gives us an escape valve, means we don't have to put everything into deployment. So can we kind of can we plan around that?
Absolutely. I think that is the clearest representation of what I was trying to highlight is, can someone solve this problem without us changing deployments again, or without changing stateful sets again? I think it's a successful thing. We tried to do that for every other part of the system. Can I add can I add a new storage provider without changing the API, et cetera?
So if someone demos at Jenkins that offers an auto pause like functionality, then we would say we don't need auto pause for GA because we know it works in orchestration. Is that a plausible path forward or something?
Yeah, although I tend to think of auto pause as the thing that allows it Jenkins, but yes.
Oh, are we agreeing on the idea that we're not saying that for GA we have to implement any of these things, but we should give consideration to ensuring that the API is capable of implementing these things, to ensure we don't box ourselves in with the design that won't allow them to be implemented?
Yes, because once we release a GA, like any behavioral, so I'm most concerned about behavior in that we introduce something that's net new that other components don't see in the GA API and are thus unable to deal with or reason about. Like, even though, we say, yes, we can add new features if they're opt-in, new features that are opt-in can still break external integrations that don't realize that feature exists. And in the kubelet, we have this problem today. We deal with it by saying, well, most of the time it's not a problem. I just want to, the concern about higher level systems being able to use Cube effectively and complex problems being solvable, even if we don't solve them, is the tension, I think, just for GA. So the discussion is probably, let's try to do the discussion early in 1.8 to close the angle of discussion about whether we have to add any more features, starting with the assumption that we aren't going to add any more features is a reasonable spot, I think. We don't need to add many of these features.
Hi everyone. From Huawei point of view, I just added the automatic rollback and in-place rolling updates. So these two features have been added and implemented inside Huawei, and we find it very useful. So that's the reason we thought that we will open source it by 1.8. We are actually working on a proposal which is getting reviewed internally, and we should be able to send out the review for automatic rollback by this week. So do you think, I mean, if you think that the design is like too deviating from the goals of this getting into GA, then we might possibly push it to 1.9. Otherwise, do you think we can still stick it to the plan?
I think it'd be useful. I'm not sure what you mean by the plan, but I think it'd be useful to describe how that feature works for you in the context of your larger CI/CD pipeline, so we can understand. Are you saying like with this feature, this thing is so much easier, or do you still have functionality in a CD pipeline, and could it have been there? That's kind of the question in my mind.
For automatic rollback, this is not directly useful for CI/CD pipeline, but it is for users who are trying to deploy applications. And then that application fails and it automatically comes back to a stable state. So rather than it getting hung or getting to a state like deadlock, it automatically comes back to the proper working state. But I know the argument around this that you don't want to mess with the app spec or the template automatically. We don't want to mess with the template. I mean, if the user wants to change it, the rollback shouldn't change it automatically. We understand that, but that is not the way we have implemented internally. But so we are trying to design it in such a way that it doesn't really hurt. So one of the suggestions what Kargis mentioned was that why not we have failure strategies, just like upgrade strategies. So one of the failure strategy could be retry, which is the current behavior, and the other one could be automatic rollback. So it wouldn't affect the default behavior, but if somebody wants to have rollback, then they could obviously choose it.
So my first reaction to that, without having read it, is all the controllers now have, I think, or at least the top 3 controllers have a rollback strategy. Is that right, Ken?
No, they have update strategy.
Update strategy. And so adding another strategy would be something we would want to consider probably before GA to do across all the controllers.
Yeah.
One, it seems like it's kind of late to add something to one controller that we can't do consistency across all of them. And it would kind of defy the time box I'd like to see on GA if we added that now. Not to say that in one after GA we can't like look at what you've done and try to add it consistently to all of them, but just rushing it into one of them seems hasty.
Yeah, I agree with that. And as it's already been mentioned before regarding consistency, right now we have the partitioning feature in stateful sets, which enables higher level orchestrators to effectively manage the life cycle of a stateful set and do more stuff from what is happening from the core controller. And auto-posing is essentially the same thing. And by enabling deployments and demo sets to be customizable in that level, we don't need stuff like automatic rollback in the main controllers. Could have a higher level orchestrator decide that, hey, this thing needs to be rolled back.
I'm hearing that you need like orchestrator examples for all 3.
Yeah, that's true.
As like early on in the cycle.
I mean, having examples of how these features work, because it's an advanced usage of the controllers managing their whole life cycle and using the partitioning feature, we definitely need examples there.
Yeah.
And actually, one member of my team is going to work on an example in the 1.8 times, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that was a good rephrasing. Is like either we have said stateful sets, daemon sets, and deployments are building blocks for higher level distributed systems. For them to successfully be considered building blocks of a distributed system, they need to be usable as building blocks. And the minimum bar for GA is proving that they can be used as building blocks, and we can set the goal as either simple orchestration or complex orchestration as possible, even if we don't enable it in GA as an addition.
Okay, I think like we're in general agreement on some of the foundational things that we need to build for, you know, for consistency as well as for support of some of the higher level aspects in these areas. Let's continue the discussion, I guess, another time, because we're actually running low on time right now. Yeah, is there anything else on 1.8 in the last 2 minutes, or any other topics that I think people want to bring up? Otherwise, we can turn it back to Michelle.
I just want to say, I think we need to follow up. I don't think we ratified that list of 1.8 proposed work as like, yeah, we're doing it or not. And we need a follow-up meeting to kind of further narrow that down and to discuss the Timebox thing to decide if we're going to do that. And have a more firm schedule for 1.8 and what could be in it.
I mean, do you think we can discuss that next week, or do you think we need to set up a separate time for that?
I would suggest that we set up a separate time with interested subgroups, with an interested subgroup of all of SIG apps, because it may not be that everybody is particularly interested in, you know, exactly what features go in 1.8, 1.9, and when GA happens, but there are probably a lot of parties who are very interested. So having something separate from SIG apps where we just have some blocked off time to discuss, I think, with this would probably be good. So we don't, you know, co-opt an entire meeting.
Okay, I'll work on getting that set up.
Awesome. We can also, I think there's some clarity that we need around what SIG architecture's role is when we're discussing new features to put in. So if someone's created a design proposal, does it need to go through SIG architecture first before we kind of like approve it for 1.8? I don't know if anyone has the answer to that question. They can follow up offline since we're running out of time. So that's one of the questions I have after this conversation. And then let's also follow up next week on the conversation that happens separately on Kubernetes 1.8. And we can also use next week's time that we usually use for stand-ups for planning for the umbrella projects, if that's good with everyone. Okay, cool. Approvals in the chat. So if there's nothing else, we can go ahead and conclude. Thank you, Dan, for running the planning section.
Sure, thanks.
All right. Appreciate everyone's time. See you next week.